RT also secretly runs the online platform African Stream across a wide range of social media platforms. Now, according to the outlet's website, African Stream is, and I quote, a pan-African digital media organization based exclusively on social media platforms, focusing on giving a voice to all Africans both at home and abroad. In reality, the only voice it gives is to Kremlin propagandists.
Sorry, guys. Thank you guys for letting me know. Sound was off. So welcome to African Stream. Sorry, welcome to Pan-African Perspectives. Today, we are going to talk to Ahmed Kaballo, the CEO of African Stream, to tell us what exactly happened. The day that press release happened, or that press conference happened with the former Secretary of State expressing distaste, distrust, and unfounded thoughts about what African Stream is, who they are, who funds them. So today we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to talk to Ahmed Kaballo. He's going to tell us what it felt like that day when he got the news, how he started the business, a little bit about his background. I think it's the first time we're getting to hear from Ahmed from a perspective of his personal life, what got him to the ideology he had, why did he start African Stream, and all of those things. So before we get into that, I want to mention to you all that as soon as I posted a note that we were going live with African Stream on Instagram, Instagram immediately stopped me from being able to go live that exact same day. Coincidence? I think not. So as always, we know that this is a platform that seems to be, meaning African Stream, is one that ruffles feathers, is very useful and insightful, but also at the same time, they're trying to silence the voices of folks like African Stream. So before we get into this, I want to make sure, okay, you guys can hear me. Okay, Noves the Great said you can hear me. Great. Manelik is in the building. Novice the Great says, shout out to African Stream. Love you guys. Saying let's go. Was in early with the comments 15 minutes ago. So appreciate that. Seems like people are still joining. Unfortunately, we can't go live on Instagram, which is a really big shame because, you know, obviously we wanted to share this as much as possible with the masses, but they are silencing folks who are speaking the truth. So with that, I am going to get right into the interview. I think it's important for you guys to hear directly from Ahmed. Apologies for the sound because we do have some sound issues on his side. But listen closely. There's a lot of gems, there's a lot of jewels, and you'll hear about the future of what African Stream has coming. So without further ado, let's get right into the interview. Right, guys. So before we get into the interview, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background on Ahmed. He comes from a political family in Sudan. His father was a very prominent person in politics there. We'll talk about that a little bit more because I think that kind of helps give you some context on Ahmed's background and how he became who he became. Early in his life, he was a youth and community worker. He also was a journalist for many years and producer for Press TV for 8 years. He's been a documentary filmmaker and made several documentary films focused on Iraq, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Sudan, and South Africa. And then later, he founded African Stream. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to get into exactly what happened there. But first of all, thank you, Ahmed, for doing this. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for the work that you do, you know, in operation, that you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
That's obviously why I reached out to you when African Stream was still up and running.
Yeah, so to that point, let's talk about that a little bit. I remember the content was so rich. It was well produced. It was well researched. And it was like, you know, the things that you had in my feed, different people that I was following, the news stories, but it was like all in one. And I felt like this was exactly what I was looking for. And so there was a couple times that I actually had reposted African Streams content on my platform. And then, yeah, we reached out. I said to myself, I would love to see how we can work together. And that's what led to the weekly live stream for that was called This Week in Africa that I did with Enem Richardson. For those of you who are watching, you might remember every Tuesday we would do This Week in Africa, where we would actually go through the news of the week that African Stream reported on. And sometimes we would include other reporters who reported on the story, so we could hear directly from them. And Ahmed also made a few cameos on This Week in Africa on a few very crucial discussions, especially those pertaining to Sudan, because he's Sudanese. And so that was kind of introduction. And I'm so glad that we met, because I think you're pivotal to a lot of the education on our history and some of the things that were happening that Western media wasn't really reporting in the way that was necessary, right? We do want to kind of a little bit into your background and your story before we get into African Stream, where we are now, where it's going. People can get a chance to hear your story directly from you. Your story reported by other people, but I'd love to hear directly from you. So first things first, did you grow up? How did you grow up? What led to the belief systems that you have?
Sure, thank you, and thank you for that kind introduction.
Absolutely.
So I was born in the UK, in Leeds. My dad was sent to Leeds University by the Sudanese government to do his PhD on the economic crisis in Sudan. And while he was there, I was born, and there was a coup in Sudan. So the National Islamic Front, which is the Sudanese branch of the Muslim Brotherhood, under the military leadership of the ideological leadership of a guy called Hassan al-Turabi, they took control of government and overthrew the democratically elected government of Sadiq al-Mahdi. And so my dad was told, because my dad had been warning about this group, he'd been saying, like, wary of the Muslim Brotherhood, they're going to try to take control, be wary of them. So when they did take control, they cancelled his PhD funding and demanded that he immediately return back to Sudan. Now, he's part of the Sudanese Communist Party, and at that point, members of the Sudanese Communist Party had been executed, had been detained. So Amnesty International said, go back to Sudan. We strongly advise you against you going back there. And he was like, yeah, I can't stay here. The Sudanese government was paying for my PhD.
Right.
Now I have no one to pay for my PhD. And so Leeds University, because of the situation, kindly offered to waive the rest of the funding for the year and gave him some support. So that was us now basically stuck in the UK, me, mom, and my sister, and that was it. There was never a plan. There was never a desire to live here in the UK. We never were desperate to be in the UK. It was my dad was meant to go there, do a PhD, then come back to Sudan, or go somewhere else in the world. So my life started with politics from the very start, and dad is obsessed with politics. It's difficult to just have a conversation that's not political with him. He will always go back. If you go grocery shopping, he'll talk about and you grab an orange, you'll be like, oh, that's a Ugandan orange. You know, to go off on a tangent about Uganda's importing and exporting oranges. So politics has always been a big part of my life. My dad is a bit older than me, so it's like people think he's my granddad. He's now, I'm 36, he's about 70, 75, 76, I can't remember which one. So it's a 40-year age gap. So when I was young, I just rejected that kind of politics all the time because it was just shoved down my face all the time, non-stop. I remember one time he wouldn't pull up at a Shell place and we were running out of petrol. We got stranded on the side of the road, and I just had like a teenage strut, like, God, what does you not going to Shell do? You're not standing. But unbeknownst to me is that actually all of those conversations that my dad was having with me constantly, he obviously had an effect.
Sure.
Obviously had an effect. And I guess, I went through what the psyop of living in a Western country as an African migrant can do to young boys. I tried to be like a bad boy, got involved in gangs, got kicked out of school, all of that stereotypical stuff that the hegemony of the society kind of indoctrinates you into thinking this is your role in the world. And then I remember I got kicked out of school. I was about 16, wasn't really doing much of my life. And I was walking down the stairs, and my dad was on the phone to one of his friends. Yeah. His friend was to me like, "How's Ahmed? How's he doing?" And my dad was just gave like the most brutal assessment. He goes, "Honestly, my son, I don't know what's wrong with him. His mom's got 2 masters. I've got a PhD, and this guy is just like an imbecile. He got kicked out of school. He's not going to college. He's just like waste. I can't believe this is my only son." Said something like that. Yeah.
Sure.
And I remember walking down the stairs, and it's like, I don't know, it was just a wake up call. Just like a wake up call that like, isn't the trajectory that you're on right now isn't going anywhere good. So like next day, I was like for college courses to go back and do my qualifications,
Sure.
to go back and just get my basic, what we call GCSEs in the UK, so that I could then go on to a college, so that I could then go on to university. And yeah, so that's what I did. I back got my basic qualifications, which then allowed me to get onto a college course, which then allowed me to eventually get onto university. And then at that point, because there'd been this kind of gap in my education, my hunger for learning was way higher than my peers. Because I've been like jumping over the fence and not going to school and missing classes, while people were fatigued, I was just like, give me more to read.
Sure.
And I was just like, I just was just reading, like reading about this, reading about that, reading about Congo, Sudan, the history of Sudan, the history of Ottoman Empire in Sudan, British colonization, anything I could read about, I was reading about. And I was like, how come this wasn't like history was one of the most boring classes in school.
Right.
That was the class. I remember I used to text the boys and be like, "Yo, I'll meet you outside. We'll go play some pro evolution soccer." Because history was BS. But it's just because now I'm older and a bit more conscious. That was by design. You know, by teaching us about the Bayeux tapestry and how some French and British women made some tapestry that hangs in France, and telling us this is one of the most important events in history.
Right.
That's by design. So I went to university, did very well at university, surprisingly so because of this big gap. And it was like, I finished my degree. I first did youth and community studies. I was like, I'm not done with this. Let me do a master's in international politics. Got a distinction in my master's. And was still feeling like I wasn't done. Was ready to do a PhD. And then I got onto an internship with a politician, quite a famous politician in the UK, by the name of George Galloway. Was working with him for a little while. And then one time, this is what introduced me into politics, into journalism. He had a show about Sudan, and he had invited the Sudanese ambassador on to talk about the crisis in Sudan. And the Sudanese ambassador must have got a phone call from the higher up saying, "You can't do the show, we don't give more praise." So he backed out last minute. So then he goes to me, "Do you mind coming on this show as a guest?" I'm not like an expert. I'm like 22 or 23.
Right.
I'm like, "Surely there's someone more qualified." I said, "No, you'll be fine." I spoke to my dad. I was like, "Isn't this, what do you think? Shall I go on the show?" And he was like, "Go on there, why not?" And I was like, "But there's elders in the community that have been studying this stuff for 20, 30 years. Is it not disrespectful for them, for me to go on with this young buck with some bum fluff on my face?"
Sure.
And he was like, "Most of these so-called experts are idiots. As long as you do your research, you'll be fine." So I went on the show. George Galloway gave me the title African politics expert under my name tag. And then from there, I was just invited on other shows. And before I knew it, I'd been on all these different international news channels talking about different African topics. And I realized I was quite good at it as well. So I was still doing youth work after I left university, still getting invited onto different networks to talk about politics and whatnot. And then someone that I did an internship with George Galloway, a sister, I won't mention her name, she was leaving the job and she goes, "Do you want my job?" Basically, I'm meant to try to get my replacement. I've got masters in international politics, but I've never done journalism before.
Right.
And I was like, "You've been on all these shows, you'll be fine." So plus you're going to start off at the bottom. You start off as like an assistant producer and you'll just work. So I was just there, assistant producer, making teas a lot of the time at the beginning. And then you know how it goes. Someone above you loses their job. There's a vacuum. You step into that. So above them. And then within 5 years, I'd become a senior producer. I was in charge of the European News Bulletin, which was, they used to have a news bulletin 5 days a week about the biggest stories. And like you see on the BBC, they used to have it on Press TV, and I'd organise that. And I became one of the senior people there in a short period of time. And then I was also making documentaries, and the documentaries, particularly the one in Venezuela, got a lot of international recognition. But I'd always try to push on Press TV African stories.
Right.
And there was always pushback. I can understand why. They're more Middle Eastern focused. We were based in the UK focused as well. But I remember one of my seniors, I won't say his name because I'm still friends with him and he's a good guy, but he did say to me, you keep pushing forward these African stories, but people just don't seem to care. It's just not a hot news story. And I just remember thinking to myself, this guy's got more experience than me, but I just know this is just not true.
Right.
The reason why is because we don't do African stories consistently. So of course, if you talk about the Middle East 98% of the time, and then you do an odd story about Africa, you've already galvanized an audience for Middle Eastern news.
Right.
Of course, the Africa story is not going to get traction. So anyway, it kind of always been my interest. It's the thing that got me reading early on when I first found my first from knowledge. Whenever there was an assignment at university, I'd always try to pick the African topic and reasons behind Rwanda genocide or the crisis in the country. I'd always try to figure out an African angle to a story. So then person went up and set up his own Muslim publication, focused exclusively on Muslim news, and he did very well. And then he came back to me and he said, "You should do this for Africa." I was like, "I would love to."
Right.
So when the opportunity arose, and I found, I'm not going to mention the guy's name because of the trouble that African students got into, and I don't want to throw him on the bus. But there's a wealthy person based in the US that's funding social movements. It's not Soros, by the way, if anyone goes down that route. Like real revolution.
Not George Soros. Right. Yes.
Yeah, real social movements. So when I pitched the idea of African Stream and what's going on, managed to secure funding from him and a few other sources for 2 years with the idea that I could become self-sustainable within those 2 years. And for the first year on African Stream, when we set it up, it was felt like we weren't getting anywhere, but the traction wasn't what it was when you saw us. Yeah, right. To a point where in a family WhatsApp group, I remember putting stories in there saying to my mom and my sister, like this post, because it had likes, and we put a lot of work into it. But the thing that gave us hope is that people were taking our stuff and it was going viral.
Right. Yep.
So I was like, it's not the content. If someone takes our video and it gets 5,000 likes and 100,000 views on theirs, and we post it and it gets 60 likes, it's not because it's the same video, same logo, same everything. So we just haven't been noticed yet. So I just kept saying to the team, just keep persevering, And then I don't know how, I just noticed a few prominent celebrities were sharing our stuff.
Right.
I mentioned in the previous podcast, one of the audience said to me, I shouldn't mention the celebrities because I might get them in trouble. I'm sure our audience probably know what I'm talking about, but a few basketball players, a few rappers, I won't mention them, but they start sharing that stuff. And before you know it, because people that follow them all have big followings, then it just creates this kind of snowball effect. And I just remember, like December, we'd launched September 2022.
Okay.
All the way until all the way until like April 2022 was happening. Then around June, that's when we really started to pick up. We reached like 60,000 followers that June, and then it was jumping by 10,000 followers every like couple of
right.
And then by August we were like on 150, and just we reached the point and we just never looked back.
Okay. I want to ask you a couple questions on that. So you launched when exactly? What date? When? December 2021? September
2022. So the plan was,
my
in the background is 2.5 now.
Yep.
My wife was going to give birth in the UK, get the stuff, go to Nairobi, and then launch, from Nairobi. son was born September the 2nd, 2022. Now, what happened? I can't remember the exact date, but the Queen of England died. Yeah.
Sure.
Queen of England died. Let me just quickly, if you don't mind, just so I can get the timeline.
Sure.
Queen, death, Queen.
While you're looking that up, there's a couple things that. Okay, go ahead, and I have some other questions.
So the Queen died 8th of September, 2022.
Sure.
So I was like, there's not a greater way to launch an anti-imperialist pan-African media channel than this.
Yep.
When else are people gonna reflect on, Europe? I was just like, what the famous saying where it says, is it something like plans, God for plans, or something like that? I can't remember.
Yeah. I think you make plans, God laughs, or something like that along those lines.
Exactly. Yeah. There we go. Thank you. We basically were like, no, this is too good. We're gonna move forward the launch day to, I believe it was the 20th or 21st of September,
Okay.
which funeral date. Yeah, a funeral. So we pushed forward her launch. So I actually launched African Stream. I'd already got the team in Nairobi before I'd actually ever stepped foot in Nairobi, which is like a huge thing. No, so I'd get back and forth before I'd moved to Nairobi.
Okay.
Yeah. We were doing very well on TikTok from the start.
Okay.
Back then, TikTok algorithm just found out people were interested in your type of content and they pushed it. But Instagram was always the thing, which we knew would be the main focus and was a struggle for the first like 8 months or so.
Got it. Yeah. So a couple of things on that. So, obviously you worked at Press TV for 8 years. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but can you talk a little bit about what Press TV did? Because that was one of the things that they tried to use in the smear campaign against you. Like it's a state-owned media, kind of like Al Jazeera, but it seems like Al Jazeera doesn't get as much bad press from the West as maybe Press TV did. So can you talk about Press TV a little bit? Like you were there for 8 years. As you mentioned, you worked on documentaries and things at that time. You reported on a number of different things. Press TV, can you talk a little bit about it? And then I want to get back to the African Stream. I just wanted to touch on that quickly.
Sure. So Press TV is Iranian state-funded media, the equivalent of the BBC, Al Jazeera. Now, I'm not working for Press TV domestically in Iran.
Right.
When I talk about Iranian news, yeah. So on the international stage, Press TV is very anti-imperialist. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, it's one of those things people say, and people could choose to believe it or not. I honestly, hand on heart, could never work for a BBC, could never work for CNN. It's just so ideologically, diametrically opposed to the politics that I was raised on.
Yeah.
But you can only ever work for anti-imperialist media. What do I mean by anti-imperialist media? Media that is quite clearly unapologetically pro-Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
Media that is against imperialist wars. Media that's against settler colonialism wherever it reigns its head. So for me, Press TV was perfect. I have no qualms. I never ever was told to do a story that I disagreed with.
There it is.
Or if I was, let me just say this: there was one story, and I just said I'm not doing that, and they were like, okay. One story, and it wasn't a Press TV story. It was my supervisor had a story. I was just like, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
I could say it was about the Birmingham schools. So in Birmingham, there were schools that were trying to push through LGBT education at primary level. Yeah, and it become this whole thing where the school is predominantly Muslim, and all of the parents are taking the kids out of school.
Sure.
I just said I'm not interested in this culture wars nonsense.
Right.
Just not me. Yeah. And they were cool. Maybe because there was another journalist that was willing to do it. Maybe there was another journalist. But I'm just saying, in the 8 years I was there, that was the only time they told me to do a story that I didn't want to do. I told them no, and it was cool.
Got it. Yeah.
But with Press TV, they let me go to Venezuela, and this is how much editorial independence that I had. When I went to Venezuela and I saw with my own eyes just how much the mainstream media lies, the
Right.
extent of the lie. I've been in the UK and I've seen nothing but on the BBC empty shops. They'll be like, oh, they go to the supermarket, people can't find anything to eat. I got there, went to a shop full of food, just day one, day one. So because what I was reporting was so diametrically opposed to what even my boss at Press TV was watching on his TV in the UK.
Right.
He said to me, just so you know, you don't have to like go this hard because you think that Iran and press. I said, no, I'm just reporting on what I see.
Right.
Literally, I'm just reporting on what I see. But because it was so different to what he'd seen on his TV, because he hadn't been to Venezuela, he thought I was like trying to be more Catholic than a Pope, trying to give, them what they want.
Right.
So yeah, I've got no complaint. All media needs funding.
Mhm.
So as the founder of Boondock said, in the US, most of the media is run by what 6, 7 people,
Yep.
all of them with corporate funding.
Yep.
Yeah, the UK is the same. It's run by 4 or 5 tycoons.
Yep.
Then you have a few state medias. Now, what I'd say to any journalist going into media is all media has bias. Just make sure that their bias aligns with your bias.
Yeah.
So if there's a pro-Palestine bias, you have that's aligned with your own bias.
Right. All fair. So I wanted you to talk about Press TV just a little bit because I think that was one of the attacks thrown your way was that he
Yeah.
works for Iranian backed. That's an enemy of the United States currently. Today it is. At one point it
Yeah.
wasn't. Today it is. Right.
Yeah.
So I just think it's important to call that out because that was one of the attacks that were thrown your way. So now to get back to African Stream, you talked about what made you start African Stream when you started it. Let's talk about like how many on staff did you have and how big was it? Like how many followers and subscribers across all platforms do you have?
Sure. So we've always had around 10 full-time staff,
Okay.
10 full-time staff, and then a bunch of freelancers, some of them regular freelancers like Inem. So Inem will have a set amount of stories that she does every month. And then we'll have occasional freelancers, like we have a guy in Haiti who will just pop up every now and again. I was like, oh, there's a big story happening in Haiti. I'd
Yep.
like to cover it. I'm like, yeah, cool. And he's like a one-man show. So he'll do the filming, the translating, the story, and send it to us. And then we have, occasionally people just want to do one-off stories. So just today, I met with a professor of African American studies from Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
And he's teaching stuff all the time. But there's so much knowledge. Can I write for you guys? And he'll be like, yeah, sure. So he'll do a story and we'll show him the format. So that's the staffing arrangement. And then we have now in terms of the audience, at the point of getting taken down, we were on 890,000 on Instagram.
Yep. I remember that.
450,000 on YouTube, thereabouts. And we'll talk about the YouTube numbers in a moment because the Stanford University wrote a hit piece.
Yep.
Within 24 hours or 48 hours from Anthony Blinken's statement, and they quoted the YouTube numbers before we'd officially been taken down.
Right.
So it shows that they had prior knowledge that this was going to happen, and they already wrote in the article before Anthony Blinken had even made a statement. But anyway, that's a topic for another day, or for later in this podcast.
Yeah.
TikTok we had 950,000, and then X we had about 60,000. X was probably our worst performing platform. 60,000. That's grown to about 105,000 since you've got taken down.
Right.
And then Telegram, smaller numbers like 10, 20,000, something like that.
Sure. So you've kept a consistent number of staff on full-time staff and then also contributors, which I think the contributors have also done great work. Obviously we had our weekly live stream and I saw the numbers from those live streams. I mean, they were really starting to get like lots of views and a ton of communication with folks. And it was really what was exciting about it was you were seeing that there was this movement beginning to build around African Stream, and there was people who were becoming more educated, people who were just becoming more aware. You know, the idea of wokeism has a negative connotation in America, but people are waking up, right? And even I myself, who has a platform like this, I was learning every week to be doing this weekly live stream. And so yeah, so at your peak, it was a little over, let's say, 2.5 to 3 million people across all the platforms, right? So what I want to do now is I want to play this Anthony Blinken statement, because I want you to respond to it, and then we can talk a little bit about what has happened since this happened. You kind of teased it a little bit, but let's remind everyone what happened. So let's go. I'll jump into it now.
He also secretly runs the online platform African Stream across a wide range of social media platforms. Now, according to the outlet's website, African Stream is, and I quote, a pan-African digital media organization based exclusively on social media platforms, focusing on giving a voice to all Africans both at home and abroad. In reality, the only voice it gives is to Kremlin propagandists.
Okay, so really quickly, I just want to start by introducing that to those who don't know. He is the Secretary of State former Secretary of State for Joe Biden under the Democratic administration in the United States, who went to Africa 4 times, I think, during the last 4 years of Biden's one term. So just to give you guys a little bit of context, his role and some insight into him. Now to you, Ahmed, when you first saw that, what was your first thought when you saw that particular press conference?
Disbelief.
Yeah.
So I have a friend who works for one of the main newspapers in the UK.
Yep.
So his job is to actually watch these things live and find out if there's anything interesting.
Yeah.
And he sent me quite an insensitive message. Yeah. Not meaning to be, but he just sent me the video clip and go, bro, be careful, you might get sanctioned. I was going to an Eritrean wedding. I was ironing my child. I was already late. My wife was like, come on, we gotta go. And then I saw this video. I called him up and I was like, bro, is this real? Is this AI? And he goes, I wouldn't play with your emotions like that. And my heart just sunk.
Yeah.
You know, like it's the most surreal thing to have ever happened to me. And God willing, it will be the most surreal thing. I don't want anything to be more surreal.
For sure.
So this guy that I've seen on the TV, that's been at that press events, you know, justifying the genocide. This guy that we talk so much about on African Stream, talking about my company that I set up, and this guy from Kings Norton, South Birmingham, I just couldn't believe it. So then I wish I did. I wish I told my wife, just tell them I can't come to this wedding.
Right.
Because at that wedding, imagine, you know what weddings like, all the small talk.
Yeah.
People talking to me, and I'm just like in just a different space.
Sure.
Just think,
Yeah.
and then I was in the UK at the time. We tried to go to the UK once a year for my son's birthday, so the grandparents could be there. It happened to be in the month of September when I launched African Stream. My son's born and all that. So I was in the UK. I wasn't with the team. Couldn't assure the team. It was just a disaster. And then you start thinking of everything. You start thinking, are people going to believe this shit?
Right.
Like, so all of that work, like sometimes 1 a.m. I'm checking stuff. For the last 2.5 years, the first thing I do when I wake up is I check African Streams pages. The last thing I do before I go to sleep, there's always like a million things that goes behind every story that people don't know about. All of that hard work discredited like that.
Yeah.
Without a single example. So shock, disbelief. Yeah, and then comes the floods of messages.
Yeah.
From like staff members wanting reassurance. Bro, like it was a crazy time. It was a crazy. Then paranoia. I remember like driving a car, my friend on thinking, is there someone following us? It just got to all sorts. And then the issue is I've probably read not more than anyone, but I've probably read more about how the US has attacked people of influence more than anyone. So the paranoia that all of that information, now they're talking about you,
Yeah.
it's like anxiety, all sorts. But then, the audience really saved us because I was just like, yo, I came out here to make news. I didn't come out here to go to war with
Right.
the US government. And then when I saw the audience's response and no one was buying that shit,
Yeah.
we did a response ourselves, just criticizing them, saying, you've called us Kremlin propagandists, you've not cited any examples, there's a long trajectory of this. What happened to Marcus Garvey and the UNIA, to what's happened to Patrice Lumumba, to who you called a Russian agent. There's a long trajectory in this, and we will not bow down, we will not cower.
Right.
And that got a good response. And that kind of energizes you some more. And then just start thinking, like, what, I don't want to tempt them, but what do I have that they can take away? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They've already deplatformed my platform. Like, I've got my family. What can they do? So you just it's a stage. There's like a shot. You go from disbelief to this.
Right.
There was an actual stage. I remember just thinking, fuck it. Excuse my language. Apologies.
Yeah.
I remember just thinking, F it. Like, what can they do? What can they do? And if they do it, then let the world see them for who they are.
100%. So, obviously I was tied to you somewhat going live weekly. I wanted to give you some space for a little bit after this happened. So we didn't communicate right away afterwards. And of course, initially I wanted to have you on to talk about it, but I think we wanted some time to go by so you could figure out how things were going to go business wise. But let's take a step back. So I do want to talk to you a little bit about some of the claims that he made. And then I also want to talk to you about some of the other things that happened, and then also where you got removed and where you ended up staying. Sorry, the lighting is okay. So let's take a step back. So he said this is a Russian propaganda platform, secretly RT. So RT, for those who don't know, is Russia Times. They began to call themselves Russia Today. Sorry, Russia Today. They began to call themselves RT, I think, after some time. And I think at one point they hired Larry King, if I'm not mistaken. Larry King of him fame for a while, and many other prominent journalists. No one ever called Larry King a Russia propagandist, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he talked about general interest news stories, so maybe that's why they didn't do that. So to speak to that, were there any ties to RT? And if there were, is there anything wrong with having any ties to RT? Maybe that's the question I should be asking. Both of those questions.
Sure. So no, there was no ties to RT. And to the second question, of course, this is the height of hypocrisy. If you're in the continent, most of these journalists, for example, I get invited to Sudan events all the time.
Sure.
When I have Sudan events, I have to say to them, bro, that's sponsored by USAID. I ain't attending that shit.
Yeah.
All the time. There was a period where they were paying journalists, I think in Zambia, we covered this, to produce anti-China stories, something like $1,000 an article. There's a whole US-funded Zimbabwe channel, which was designed during the Mugabe years to just talk specifically about Zimbabwe through cable news for the Zimbabwean opposition. So, the idea that state funding is okay, but only when they do it is number one. Number two, to the original question, had there been any evidence, they would have associated it with the claim. So when they do a press conference, they usually do a press briefer. Which has some more details. Like, where was it? So that's the injustice of it all. Like, you can say this, and because the US itself is seen as an authority, itself can be seen as a source, which is just nonsense, isn't it? Because just look at the trajectory of it, of all the lies that they've told. They told us Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction to justify the Iraq War. They told us Muammar Gaddafi was giving his soldiers Viagra to go rape women. They told us that he'd hired African mercenaries to kill revolutionaries. All of this turned out to be false after the fact, after the death and destruction. They told us for the first Gulf War, Iraqi soldiers were taking Kuwaiti babies and throwing them out of incubators.
Right.
Completely false. The Gulf of Tongan to get involved in the Vietnam War. I could go on and on and on and on. Now, what happens is they tell a lie, and then years later, they go, actually, that wasn't true. But the damage has already been done. So I
Right.
suspect in a decade or so, we'll be vindicated. But what use is that to us at that point?
Right.
In a decade, like, is our staff all going to be intact? Do we have
Sure.
the funding to will I fall out with people because we run out of funding in a few months because they've completely decimated our business model? The damage is done. A million Iraqis are dead. Libya is a failed state where an Ethiopian woman was being whipped on camera just last week. So it doesn't matter if the truth comes out eventually when the intended consequences of the lie are there.
Well put. Yeah, and it's frustrating. It angers me to know, that there was absolutely nothing that can be done to refute that. Because once it's said, right? It's in the court of public opinion. And what it did was it led to you being deplatformed. So let's talk about that. I remember getting a bunch of I got a bunch of messages on Instagram and emails, people saying what happened to African Stream. And so and WhatsApp messages. I go to YouTube, gone. All of our collaborations that we did on Instagram, gone. And so Edom and I were texting back and forth, and she was kind of giving me like we're working on some things internally. We'll get back to you, but this is what's happened. Yeah, this is true. We've been deplatformed. So talk us through that. How did you become aware that you were deplatformed, and then platforms are you still on? Because I do want to talk about where you're still available to for those who want to find it, because many people don't know. But so let's start with that. Where did you get removed from, and how did you find out?
So if I may quickly, another point of the making a statement, and Max Blumenthal predicted this in July. We did an interview with him in July about the NBC attack on us. And he said, the point of these attacks, because on the surface, the NBC attack makes no sense. You're spreading disinformation, no examples of how we're spreading information. He said, the point of these attacks is to create a AI chat GBT answer. So when someone says, what is African Stream? The answer can be, this is Russian propaganda. ChatGPT doesn't say alleged Russian propaganda, although there was no evidence provided. Yeah.
Right.
So if you go on African Stream Wikipedia right now, it's based on Anthony Blinken's statements and then the bullshit article by Stanford Observatory that came out within 48 hours of Anthony Blinken's statement. So now it's in the public record.
Right.
And again, nobody looks back and goes, so did they ever give any evidence?
Right.
Now, where are we still? I found out I got an email. Obviously, we had an email address linked to the YouTube channel's taken down, no right to appeal. I advise you, yeah, sir?
You have a
Oh. I advised you before to get on to Meta Verified. Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Because of the type of content you're doing, get on Meta Verified. Whenever the message appears, at least you have a human being you can talk to.
Correct. Yes.
And so far that served us well until that happened. Yep. Meta Verified. I was like, listen, they're taking us off. What's going on? Yeah, we'll get back to you. Nothing. I write to them again. You're taking us off. Nothing. I was like, so now this human being is obviously being told by somebody that we don't have a legitimate response to this, so just ignore him. So that's what we were taken off Instagram within 72 hours, and then finally the shocking one was TikTok, which happened within about a week or so, and then the real killer was Google. So we had all of our African Stream content on a G drive. They took down the G drive. They took down all of our email addresses. All of the potential sponsorship deals that we were talking to, all of those different people we were in contact with, gone, completely gone. Yeah. And that's just a lesson, because even some of the lives you did with Inem, you know, you did an amazing one in South Africa.
Yep.
On the xenophobia in South Africa. I was in the comments like writing questions because I was so engaged. That wasn't backed up anywhere. Am I right in believing? That's just gone forever.
Yeah.
So this is a lesson for content creators. Yeah, all of these clouds and stuff, but don't sleep on that hard drive.
Oh yeah.
That hard. Do not sleep on that hard drive.
Great point. And so, you know, I asked that question, but I forgot to go back to, because you mentioned this briefly. There was a smear piece from NBC, and then there was also Voice of America. So we
Yeah.
spoke about Voice of America on the live stream with Enem once, before you were, you know, the platform. Can we talk about what happened with the Voice America story? Because I think that was like the step before this Anthony Blinken statement. So what happened with Voice of America? What did they say, and what was your response to them?
So Voice of America is literally funded by the US State Department. Yeah. And it's not allowed to publish stories about domestic affairs, although that might have changed because the US Congress decided that American people shouldn't be propagandized. Yeah.
Sure.
But it's allowed to publish. So what's the inverse of that?
You can
Keep the
propagandize
propaganda.
other people, but you can't propagandize
Yeah.
American people, right? Sure.
Yeah. And I think that might have even changed where they do now publish domestic stories, but primarily its focuses on like American foreign policy issues.
Sure.
So Inham did a story, very factual, indisputable story, listing the amount of drone strikes in Somalia from George W. Bush II to Barack Obama, Donald Trump to Joe Biden. Yeah, and the listing how many they are, and saying irrespective of who wins the U.S. election, drones are going to rain down on Somalia.
Right.
There's literally nothing you can dispute with what she said. Nothing.
Right.
She even put sources there. So then they released a video and they released an article. And the video is on YouTube. You should go on there. It's brilliant. 100% of the comments are people calling them propagandists and people saying this is why he took down African Stream because they're destroyed. Most of the comments are about us and are brutal to their piece. Now, what's interesting about this piece is it's related to NBC because when NBC article wrote a piece saying you guys are spreading disinformation to 40 million Black Americans, do you want to respond to these claims? We did this amazing response that kind of went viral. The journalist that wrote it had to make his Instagram private. Yeah. Which I'm a bit proud of. Do you know what I'm saying? If you're gonna write garbage, you deserve to be attacked for the garbage that you write. So when it came to Voice of America, clearly the journalist didn't want to put their name on it. Yeah. So initially, it was written under a name of Priscilla something something. But we searched online. There's no digital footprint of this Priscilla person. And I looked at the journalists that Voice of America have, and there was someone called Purity. I forget her last name.
Sure.
I went onto her pages, and she initially listed the story as her story, and then quickly deleted it. But we managed to take a screenshot. So to me, this was the greatest honor that you're not even, if you're going to do a smear piece about us, you're not even willing to put your name on it because you know it's bullshit. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And you know we're going to come back. So we did a response to them because in their video and article they said African Stream distorts US's role in Somalia. There's only been 3 recorded civilian deaths, which is just laughable. It's not laughable because people have died. It's a disgusting underestimation of how many people have been killed in Somalia, and it's quite easy to disprove. So in our response, we used Amnesty International reports, human rights reports, several Somali NGOs, and we did a very powerful response and basically, shut them up. But I feel like at that point, they were like, we can't discredit these guys journalistically. Every time we try to discredit them journalistically, they come back and use it to grow their platform some more with a rebuttal. So I feel like there was a need to up the ante, and that's what the Anthony Blinken thing was. Secondly, the issue that they had is they thought that we were affecting Kamala Harris's potential to be elected into the White House.
Right.
Quite obviously, because anyone that's part of the African stream, we're critical of US imperialism, but across the board, we see them as two cheeks of the same backside. We don't tell people to vote Republican. We don't tell people to vote Democrat. We think they're like the fox and the wolf, as Malcolm X put it.
Sure.
The fox will bite you with a smile. The wolf will bite you with a growl. But either way, you're getting bitter. So we never in any way would advocate for Trump. However, because our audience is predominantly African people in the continental diaspora, they assess that we're more harmful to Harris's campaign than we are to Trump.
Yep.
And anyone that's watched the Mark Zuckerberg interview on Joe Rogan, he was saying the the government of the US would call them directly and say, you need to take this down all the time about insignificant things. I think you mentioned the Leonardo DiCaprio meme that no one would even bat an eyelid for about, and the government's calling them up, telling them to take it down.
Yep.
So I have no doubt that there were someone from the US government was told to do something about African Stream. And maybe, I'm just theorizing here, Instagram said, we can't just take a platform that's almost at 1 million down without anything.
Right.
If you say something, then we'll take them down. But they can't just wake up one day and the platform's gone and we can't attribute it to something. So I think the smear, the lie, was what was needed by social media platforms to take us down. But the phone call was already made before that. Because a month or so before that, we'd started to get heavily shadow banned. Heavily shadow banned. Particularly around anything. We did one post in particular where all of Kamala Harris's supporters in the media all came after us at the same time, where we compared the Colombian vice president, Francis, who was a trade unionist peasant from a trade union background, who actually represents a community and made her way through the ranks, to Kamala Harris, who's used to be a prosecutor who has taken millions of dollars from APAC. So we just did a comparison, and on that post, Joanne Reed from MSNBC and another journalist from CNN, they all just went crazy. Like, you guys are pushing right-wing talking points. You guys are secretly Trump supporters. So I have a feeling around that time. But even in the article, the smear piece by Stanford Observatory, they said they did a data analysis and they said we'd criticize Trump more. So they counted 96 times we criticized Trump and 56 times that we criticized Kamala Harris. So even they recognize that we attacked Trump more, but it's not a problem when we attack Trump because that wasn't who they wanted to get into the White House.
Yeah, and I mean, you said a lot there, and I want to get back to this because what you said I think is really important. I think so. What caused this is their fact checker on the right saying quote unquote false, but what was actually, which is interesting, what was actually stated, and I'm going to read this out loud, and for those who, I'm just going to read it out loud. It said it is now a bipartisan tradition for each new U.S. president, whether Republican or Democrat, to rain drone bombs down on the East African country in which millions of civilians are simply struggling to survive. So that is the direct quote that they said is false. Now, the question I have, and I know this is the question that you have, is what specifically about that statement is false, right? And so your response obviously was an interesting one. I think you guys faced it head on. Right? You guys responded directly to them and even responded directly to the person who wrote the article. And then there was also the other article that you just referenced, which was this article from the Stanford Observatory. I just want to share that with folks because I think it's helpful to know what kind of smear campaign was going on for the Anthony Blinken statement so you guys can see it. So that was, the other one was on August 24th. This one was September 17th. And the article states, African Stream, Russia's latest covert influence pipeline targeting Africa and the Russia's latest covert. Wow, that is interesting. And of course, as you said, if you type into ChatGPT, it's going to pull from these kinds of articles, ChatGPT 4. it will pull from or even Perplexity. It pulls from this article, it'll pull from Voice of America, and it will cite them as fact, right? At this time, it was 406,000 subscribers on, what was this, on YouTube, right? 1,900. So I just wanted to share that just so people can see what was happening beforehand. So I think you gave a really good background as to what was happening, what was going through your mind, the conversations you were having with the staff. So you're removed from some of these platforms. Now you are and still are live on X, and you do still have the Patreon as well that people can support and be involved in editorial meetings and all of that kind of stuff. Am I missing? Are you on any other platforms where people can now go find this content, the African Stream content today?
So I started, we initially set up an African Stream backup account, but the journalist that wrote the Stanford Observatory has a real hard on for us for some reason. She was tweeting at Instagram saying, these guys have set up an African Stream backup, please take it down. And then it got taken down. And she was DMing people saying, I saw that you keep sharing African Stream content. Do you know that they're secretly run by the Russians? This journalist is like, had the personal vendetta, no evidence. We did a rebuttal to her, and then she did the whole Karen thing of, I've been attacked. All of their followers are attacking me. And she said something about anti-Semitic tropes. No one said anything about, no one even knew that she was Jewish. So even though she did a whole piece about us, as you just pointed out, somehow in that she's become the victim. Anyway, one more thing I mentioned about the Stanford Observatory is, if you notice the date of the article, Anthony Blinken's statement was made on the 13th, and the article says on the 16th.
17th.
Which is 17th. There's no way they could do that level of analysis. It came out on a Sunday, I believe. Anthony Blinken's article was on the statement was on Friday evening. So how could you have done an in-depth data analysis within 2 days?
The first time you mentioned it, as a matter of fact. Look at that.
So my theory is that they knew about this before, took a screenshot. If you said the screen, we looked at the numbers when we actually got taken down. It wasn't 460,000. It was actually more. So you've taken a screenshot before Anthony Blinken's statement. How is that possible?
Right.
So those are just a few things that suggested that they knew this was going to happen and were told to prepare an article to come out following. They probably we're going to release it the next day. Well, that's too bait. Keep it an extra day, release it on a Sunday. Now, I'm posted on my own Instagram account, and it's gaining some traction. My own Instagram account, I never had any desire to be popular on my own Instagram, but just out of necessity, I'm just posting everything that African Stream produces on my Instagram account. And it's doing well because of the connections that we've got. We collab with Authentic African, we collab with Chaka Bars, some of the guys that supported us before. We're getting some of the traction, about a 10th on Instagram. So before, we were reaching between 20 to 30 million people a week on Instagram. Now we're reaching about 2 million to 3 million on my personal account. So it's still something, but obviously way down to what it was before, for obvious reasons.
Right. But you're on
it. Now to the article, you said they wrote a whole article saying that I've just put it in our chat. They also did a 10-minute YouTube video. Don't know if you can see this. The YouTube video is ridiculous. That's the one I was telling you about, where all the African Stream supporters are flooding it. Like there's something like, listen. They're trying to link me with Al Shabaab. So they go, Ahmed Kaballo, who used to work for Iranian-backed Press TV.
Let me pull up that screenshot so that we can show it, because it's wild to see. I think it's important for people to see this, right? So fact check, the video is titled Fact Check, African Stream Distorts U.S. Military's Mission in Somalia. And look at what's on the screen. A former contributor of the Iranian state-owned Press TV. That is how they described you on the screen there. So sorry, finish what you were saying.
So if you play an extra 30 seconds, they go way worse than that. They say they go after former contributor to Iranian-backed state Press TV they put out this article saying that the US presidents bombed Somalia when the US is only bombing Al-Shabaab militants, which is meant to be which is backed by Iran. You see what they did then? So they made it seem that the reason, even though I didn't even write this article, Ilan did. They said he used to work for Press TV. He's now writing this article, when we in nowhere in the article do we say anything about Al Shabaab in the positive. We've just
Right.
condemned and criticized Al Shabaab all the time. In fact, we say Al Shabaab was created from the vacuum after the US backed regime change to move the Islamic courts in Somalia. So we never in any way support Al Shabaab and we criticize Al Shabaab, but they try to, not directly because they couldn't, link
Right.
me and Al Shabaab. And obviously it didn't work. You've just gone through the comments.
Yeah, so we wanted to show that too, because you, as you said earlier, I mean, we believe African Stream. You guys are documenting baseless lies, couldn't contend with the reporting, so they got them banned. I mean, everyone is saying what you said, right? Everyone is in support of African Stream, not them. I mean, like I said, it's almost 100% of the comment that is in agreement with African Stream. It's clear that there's no support for Voice of America and what they in this video. I mean, overwhelming African Stream in these comments.
You won't find a single comment that supports what they say, not one. And considering this isn't our YouTube channel,
Right?
This is their YouTube channel. So
yeah,
it's just ridiculous.
I mean, go watch for themselves. I mean, clear, it's there. Yeah, I thought it was important to kind of just to back up what you were saying earlier. Okay, so talked about where you're live now. What is the future for African Stream moving forward? What is the plan for how you continue to disseminate this information to the world?
I'll be honest, just to be completely honest, we need to find more funding quick because the whole project, the whole business model, we were starting to monetize YouTube. We were starting to get some people were asking for advertisement. So it looked like within a very short period of time, we were about to become self-sustainable. But
Right.
with a blink of an eye, all of that is gone. So at the moment, we have funds to last us maybe another 2 to 3 months, just to be honest with the audience. I don't want to lie.
Sure.
And without funds, you can't run a media organization the way that you want to. We could obviously still run it, but I would hate to see African Stream become a shadow of its former self. Instead of doing so many reports, we do like one, a selfie video just talking to the cat. It won't be what it is, and I'd rather not continue than to go down that route. So we're desperately, just today, I was speaking to potential funders, pitching and pleading. But yeah, we need funds basically. And without funds, it will just be something that we'll have for the archive that will be, documented. But yeah, we have to continue without being allowed to operate on the platforms that allow you to generate income from your content.
Got it. Are you open to public funding, like a platform and funding that way? So we maybe not have that now, but I think what I can do is I can share that at the end of this video for folks if there is something that gets set up, because I think the people want this. It's obvious. I mean, just through those comments that I get, because I was at one point associated with that live stream we would do weekly. People come to me to tell me they miss African Stream. It's a constant barrage of messages about what we miss and what wish would come back. So I think that's something I could share a little bit later, live stream. So basically where you are today is you're operating business as usual on the platforms that you're allowed to operate on based on, what the challenges were with the banning and the removal. And you'd like to continue as is, but obviously there's a need for funding. So that's how we are today. The Patreon. Let me share the Patreon with folks so people get a chance to see where they can support today, like what you can do this very moment. So let me stop the screen share and present this here. So if you just go to patreon.com/African Stream, right, you'll be able to see the platform and you can see the different ways that you can support monthly. So you can join the different programs here. I think this is really important. Do you want to talk through what the different programs offer for folks so that they know that, join African Stream on Patreon, how they can be supporting and what that gives them as a financial supporter of the platform?
Sure. Most of the differences between the tiers is about communicating with us, about what stories we should cover, joining us on an editorial meeting, coming to our Nairobi offices, visiting us, But there is you can watch the same stuff for $10 a month as you can on $50 a month or $100 a month. We don't distinguish in that way because what we set up African Stream to do. But it's all about just communicating with us. We've also set up a live chat on the Patreon, so people are giving some very good recommendations. One of the recommendations that someone gave recently was that there's a collective. It's Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. You guys are posting so much about Traore, but we want to know more about what Niger and Mali are doing. I'm like, that's fair. So yeah, we get on board and then we post it back in the chat like we did this story, etc., etc. Yeah, it's the way about the collective suit for the liberation of African people at home and abroad. So it takes all of us. So we always wanted that type of open dialogue with our audience. Anyone that followed African Stream will know that we actually responded to most DMs when we were there. One of these pages that was posted and like really engaged with people's concerns and stuff because we thought, what, every now and again we got it wrong and whatever we did, we issued a redaction sign. But it came from our audience. Oh, by the way, I think you guys got this wrong. If we just ignored them and took this kind of top-down approach that we would never have been the force or the platform that people came to love and defend, as you just saw on that YouTube page of Voice of America.
Man, appreciate you taking the time to tell your story and to talk us through what happened. I am sure the audience is going to find this really, really, and really helpful. And I look forward to seeing folks, Patreon and more of your content. I miss the live streams, learning so much through that process. And I was learning as we were going along, and it was an incredible experience. And I'm looking forward to potentially bringing that back. So with that, do you have any final words for the audience before we bring this to a close?
Yeah, just two things. Number one, thank you, because honestly, I can act all brave and stuff. You're getting attacked like that. Without the support, you can go into a dark place. So thank you to the audience, not just for me, but I know that's how everyone feels. Editorial meeting discussing it. Everyone was like, thank God the audience doesn't believe this nonsense. But like people in my background, I'm not anything amazing. I'm not, I went to private school or had like a education. Your is called Authentic African. We are authentic storytellers. So even if African Stream does go away, God forbid, don't be like disillusioned. Oh, this is a tragedy. We all have these devices in our pockets, and we have, the sincerity to tell the truth. In Land of the Blind, the man with one eye is king, and the mainstream media is a plethora of liars. And most of the time, people don't realize until they're talking about their country, because that's just the topic that Oh, I'm from Sudan and I know they're lying here, but they're probably telling the truth very well. No, the guy from Venezuela knows that they're lying about his country. The guy from Somalia knows that they're lying about his country. So, anyone that was engaged with African Stream all the time, anyone that was reading our stuff, be empowered to tell your own stories as well. Because we need as many. These guys have got the might of the US empire behind them, the French empire behind them, the British empire behind them. We've just got each other. So please be empowered to tell your own stories as well.
Well put. I really do appreciate everything you've done. I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. And so, yeah, and of that point, don't disengage. In fact, re-engage and get more engaged. I think you and I are going to have a conversation a little bit after this. So I want to talk about what we can do. But I really do appreciate you taking this time, and I really look forward to what's to come next.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. Appreciate it. And we appreciate you. Make sure you follow Authentic African. They're definitely carrying the torch. So, yeah. Thanks, bro.
I appreciate that. So, what did you guys think of the interview? It was really interesting to hear Ahmed's story. We did record that a little earlier. And so unfortunately he wasn't able to be live with us right at this very moment because of the time difference. He's in Kenya, and so it's very late there right now. So I'm excited I was able to bring that to you guys. A lot of engagement I saw here. a lot of thoughts, lots of discord and conversations. So a couple of things that were asked that we weren't able to get to. And sorry, I'm a little under the weather right now, but this information is important, so I'm live. So one of the questions was about Fanbase, which is a Black-owned social media platform started by Isaac Hayes III, if I'm not mistaken. And so, it's a really interesting idea and thought process. So it's something that I'll bring to Ahmed and the team. And there's a couple other platforms they could potentially look into. And I'll keep you guys posted if we do have anything else that comes from some of those conversations. There was also a question about, I want you guys to know, Patreon is probably the best and fastest way you can contribute and help keep African Stream alive. So everybody flood the Patreon and do whatever you can. I mean, I know that, we're dealing in a post-inflationary period. So, if you can, please do. This was an important platform, and it had a lot to do with my education over the last year and a half. 2 years now, over 2 years. So yeah, so we'll have more conversations like this moving forward. As you can imagine, my energy is pretty low because I'm not feeling well, but I'm glad you guys were all able to join, really engaged. And we'll have more conversations with the folks at African Stream. This will not be the last time you guys hear from African Stream on this platform. We're in talks, which I told you about before, but we're in talks right now. And so I won't give anything away until plans are solidified and we know exactly what we're going to do, but this won't be the last time. So stay tuned. We will be going live again this coming Sunday, the following Monday again, and potentially another day throughout the week next week, depending on how conversations go. So I just want to say thank you guys for joining. Shout out to Ya, YOA, supporter from the beginning. Really appreciate your support. Afuya, thank you for joining. Aya, what's up? Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, guys. So again, stay tuned to the platform. We are not going to let their voices be silent. And also, I won't be silent. Instagram, unfortunately, removed my ability to go live once again. It happened for about 8 months last year. And literally the day I posted the flyer for African Stream, they removed my ability to go live. And so I think it's not a coincidence. I think it's purposeful, but it won't stop. It won't stop me from bringing you this information. And it won't stop African Stream from doing what they do. And the rest of us who are aligned and really working to amplify the message. So with that, some advice on how to stay healthy. Oil and honey every hour. Stay hydrated. I am drinking plenty of water. So again, thanks again for everybody joining. We will see you guys all on the next. Oh, if you haven't already too, subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button on this video. Share this with anybody you know who may have missed the live stream, but who want to know the story behind African Stream and what's going on right now. So many people ask me. And so this is your chance to be able to give them the answer, right? And so, yeah, I just want you guys to stay vigilant and don't give up. Don't give up. I know it's hard. I've had so many conversations with folks that have talked about disengaging completely. They're over it. They're done. And I think at times like this, it shows you who you really are. And it's about how you respond in times of, of challenges, really shows you who you really are and the strength you have. So with that, I want to say thank you again for watching. Look forward to seeing you guys all on the next video. Bye, guys.
RT also secretly runs the online platform African Stream across a wide range of social media platforms. Now, according to the outlet's website, African Stream is, and I quote, a pan-African digital media organization based exclusively on social media platforms, focusing on giving a voice to all Africans both at home and abroad. In reality, the only voice it gives is to Kremlin propagandists.